Good morning, Memorial Drive and friends. This morning, Trent Taylor, well, I'm Tim Rush, one of the preaching ministers at Memorial Drive, and this is Trent Taylor, who is our Memorial Drive youth minister. I feel like whenever you're introduced as a youth minister, that really doesn't do it justice, as if there's any job more difficult in ministry than youth ministry. But even then, it doesn't do justice to what you do. I feel like it should be something like youth pastor guru, something like that.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I'll be honest in saying that sometimes it's a struggle, but just because of, I think, the view that some people have of the role of youth minister, and it's a little bit different choosing it to be, the career path as opposed to a road to the career path. So yeah. But I love it. It keeps me humble.
I do feel like we're blessed at Memorial. Man, you mentioned this a second ago before we got on. These allergies today are horrible. At Memorial, I don't feel like it's seen as an events coordinator. Like some places, I just get the feel of that's what the expectation is just keep the youth entertained and provide something for them. I don't know if you ever feel like that's the box you're put in at Memorial, but it seems to me like how you're talked about behind your back, I'll say, is a spiritual formation director that's really impacting generations. So it seems like that's the view at Memorial, which I feel like is a blessing to be a part of.
Yeah, thanks. That's a whole other Zoom discussion, I think. But
that could be a really good Zoom discussion. We could have Clark and Carson Rush interviewing you.
Oh yeah, that would be fun for sure.
Carson's across the room giving me a big thumbs up right now. I did ask them. I told them, hey, I'm about to get on this call with Trent, and we're going to talk about Sunday's sermon. What popped out at you? Was there anything that came up for you? And it was really fun to hear their this is what they would ask about, or this is what they would want to say about it.
Oh, that's cool. Well, have them jump in.
Yeah, because I purposefully, whenever I watch on Sunday, I try to discipline myself not to think about this conversation, because I try to just absorb for me and not think about what will this look like when we talk later. And so then I watch it again just to make sure later on that I know what were the main points, that sort of thing. So it was fun to hear they weren't listening to you on Sunday knowing this question was going to be asked later. There were just certain pieces of it that really resonated with them. So the first thing I want to ask about is you made the points. Did I say this already? Trent preached on Sunday. I assume that's assumed in this. Great job, by the way. I think it's so valuable just to have multiple voices speaking on these subjects, because there's you bring such a new perspective that I think is so important and so valuable for us to hear. Even when we're all sharing the same thing from a different perspective, it's just so fascinating. But you talked about despair and pride and how the two lies of Satan that, So talk about that. Why despair and pride? Why did that come up for you? Why was that on your radar to share?
Yeah. So I want to be honest with whoever watches this. So Tim asked me that question a few minutes before we hit record, just because I haven't done these, but I haven't done these combos before. And so he was just helping me prepare for it. Well, I launch into this big dissertation on why, and then about 10 minutes later, he said, "Okay, we're getting ready to hit record." And I was like, "Are you kidding?" so
My bad.
Yeah, no. I misread the cues there. And so anything I say now feels a little bit like, man, am I repeating myself? And I know Tim.
Right.
So
Yeah, you don't know. Did I say this to Tim or did I say this just
Yeah.
now?
Yeah. So I had said before, but certainly I had mentioned in the sermon a comment that Angela made to me about masks and all, and and that got me thinking about just about why do we always hide? Why is there that feeling of, man, I'm exposed and I need to cover up? That idea that I always have to put my best foot forward, which oftentimes means I'm pretending. That my best foot usually isn't where I live, and so I'm always pretending. I'm pretending to be better than I am just at rest. Um, you know, my resting face. So just for people who know me, my resting face is not a smile. And so when you see a smile, in fact, a couple of years ago, I was aware of that because someone had made a comment to me about, man, you don't look happy. And I'm like, man, I hated hearing that because I'm like, I am really a happy, content person. And so I really made an effort when I was out in public, or even when I was out on a bike ride. I was making an effort to smile, or to work on smile, to look happy. And it truly, I mean, it was the truth, but that's not my resting face. And so I think this idea of masks, it's not necessarily where we are, right? We're either hiding something we don't want to see, or we're trying to put something on that's not reality in the moment. And so, like I mentioned, this is hard stuff. It's complex stuff. When you talk about the human heart, and human behavior, and just the idea of our existence. And so I was trying to really come up with the least common denominators here. And so in my head, which I do not presume that anything in my head is normal or that anyone else has this thought. So the ideas of despair and pride, it's like a lot of things I just will steal because I've read them or heard them somewhere. But I just been thinking about this, and I was like, what are the two extremes of where we live? And I think people oftentimes they either live in the extremes or they live in the center of the tension between the two. And that idea of, man, living with no hope, or we forget that hope is out there, or then there's the issue of pride. And I catch myself in this so often. I'll feel worthless. I'll feel like, man, I'm not doing much. And then I'll have one success, and then I'm like, man, I did great. So it's like from one day to the next, I'm living in that pendulum swing of man, am I really worthy of anything? And then I don't need anyone. I did that well. And so that's kind of where the concept for me came. And then I just see it in a lot of people. So.
Well, it really resonated with me. because I feel like I can walk into a room and feel both of those emotions or those feelings that nobody here should listen to me. I really ought to just keep my mouth shut, while simultaneously, not simultaneously, but it's like a switch that will flip, and I'll be like, why is nobody asking me? I know more about this than anybody. Everybody ought to be asking me. And then I can go right back to despair. Nobody should even look my direction. And it feels, okay, so saying this out loud, I'm thinking, oh no, would a psychologist be listening to this going, Tim's manic, or what is it? But it just feels like it's so real, that both of those things, both of those voices live inside of us constantly.
Oh, absolutely. There's and I've mentioned this before. I mentioned it to the teens frequently. But there's in Philippians chapter 2, I think it is, where it talks about consider others better than yourselves, or consider others' needs above yourself. Mm-hmm. And years ago, I read that, and we were looking for some sort of activity or device to use to get that point across at a retreat or something. And I still use this years later, and I challenge people, when you walk into a room, when you walk in, classroom at school or whatever, look around the room at everyone there. And if there's anyone in the room that you feel is beneath you, and for me, I do this as just a check with my own pride, and walk in, and Trent, is there anyone here that you feel even slightly superior to? And man, Tim, that is one of the hardest things. And so it brings us full circle back to this question. So how do I deal with that? If there's anyone that I feel is beneath me in that room, then there's my struggle with pride as soon as I walk in. If I can walk in and honestly, feel like, okay, I can put everyone in this room above me, then that moment could easily lead to despair if I don't really rightfully understand my place with God. And so it's a huge challenge.
So that leads into the craftiness of Satan. That one isn't the answer to the other. Like it just seems like, I mean, you did a great job making this point. When the lie is, I am nothing, I am worthless, I will never measure up. We want the answer to be, I am God's gift to these people. I am the everything. Because it feels like that ought to be the response to Satan's lie.
Yeah. And as even up until a couple of days before Sunday, like on Friday, I was trying to work on the wording of these lies and the truths. And then, what I ended up with was, the lie being that I'm nothing, I'll never amount to everything. And then the truth, I'm a sinner. And the truth being, I am not righteous. I am not worthy. Yeah. And I'm like, wait, and that's where the subtleness of Satan comes in, because the truth can easily sound like the lie. If we are not really sticking close to the Father and really trying to remain rooted in His Word, so that we can hold the truth up to all of those moments, all those words that are coming from people out there, even friends. I was with a group of guys recently, not from our church, but a group of guys that are friends, and there's one or two guys in that group that are like always like the brunt of their jokes. and they're always, and I'm like, and those guys are not less than, I mean, they're incredibly bright. They're, they're well respected by the group, but I'm like, okay, at what point do these jokes start to take root in their hearts, and become truth for them? And so and I, they're all living it in fun, and it's part of their friendship, between these 5 or 6 guys. But I'm like, man, we've got to be careful of that, especially as followers of Christ. We've got to be careful. But I also don't want to be so serious always that I'm not, I need to be able to take when someone pokes fun at me, when,
Yeah.
people are making fun of my gray hair or something, or people make fun of the way I say something. Um, that's part of us living in community together.
Yeah.
Um,
Man, I
and so,
remember as a 7th grader going to basketball camp, and Ron Baker was the varsity head coach, and he's putting on this basketball camp. And at one point, and I did I say 6th grade? Probably 6th grade. Man, I was just a timid would be me. And he razzed me about something at one point, and it made me feel so big because I felt like it was this weird sense of he thinks I can take being razzed, and
yeah,
it was really important for me. Um, so there is a place for it in community of it that even says acceptance. But at the same time, that's exactly what Satan uses uh, to give us other messages when it's just piled on and piled on.
yeah. And I think that's where intimacy really comes into play in our relationships. If I'm in that group of friends, and we're messing around with that a lot, and having a close enough, intimate enough relationship that I could personally go to that guy and say, hey, listen, that we're joking around. That we highly respect you and love you.
Yeah.
And that's where my own confidence in myself would come into play, that I could go to that guy. But, yeah, that's a really good perspective that basketball camp brings in.
So this whole dynamic of the Kronk video, the angel on one side and the devil on the other, why is it so hard for us to know when these messages are from God and when they're from Satan? It seems like we ought to just be able to know, oh, that's Satan's lies.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I'm kind of, I guess, asking this, not stating it, but so, that that plot device of the angel and demon that are used. So at least in that situation, is the angel and demon actually the voice of God and Satan, or is it actually the extremes of our own two voices? And so I think the caution for me comes in: am I listening to the extremes of my own heart, or am I actually listening to what God is saying versus what Satan is saying? Because I think Satan can really speak from the desires of my own heart. See, I think that's why we ask for God's desires rather than our own. And so
Yeah.
I don't know. To answer that question, that's what I think we have to be careful. Are we listening to our own voice, or are we actually listening to the voice of God?
Yeah. Yeah. So a few weeks ago, when I preached at the drive-in service, I talked about the voice that says, if you were smarter, you would be able to whatever. And how I want God's voice to counteract that by saying, you are smart, you are intelligent, you are gifted here. But the truth is, his response is, I am with you. And that doesn't that doesn't give me confidence in myself. And what I really want is confidence in myself, but it leads back to reliance on him. Yes. So in that instance, one voice sits on the shoulder and says, you are not smart enough. And this voice says, oh, you are smart enough. And neither of those are from God. Those are both lies. And so the practice of listening to God becomes the most important thing, not just for making decisions in life, but for mental health.
Yeah. And it's just so hard. It's and I think this whole thing is hard. One of the things that there wasn't time, we were talking before this about the challenge of the 15-minute
Mm-hmm.
targeted time frame on Sunday is really good because it forces us to distill it down to the important stuff. But it's also hard because there's so much we can't explore. And so one thing I think that goes along with what you're talking about is the struggle that we're in here. None of this is easy. And neither was our salvation. I was talking to someone this past week, and this is an area that I didn't get time to explore quite enough. And I'd written this down in Ephesians 1, at verse 5, it says that God adopted us into the family. And so this friend I was talking to this past week has an adopted child. And she said that one of the things that people say to her, or they said to her, especially early on when their child was young, was, and again, very insensitive, very stupid thing to say, but people used to say to her, oh, you did it the easy way. And she said, oh my goodness, if they knew how hard, if they knew the struggle we went through for 2 years of working on that adoption. And she said, I know they were just saying it out of ignorance, but it was such a challenge. And so I think of that verse that God has adopted us, and I think what incredible struggle that it took for him to, that was not the easy way. The adoption has come through literally the loss of blood and giving of life through his son. And so this whole process is, our salvation, just because he's done the heavy lifting, doesn't mean the hard stuff's over. I think it continues to be just this great challenge for us.
So something that's coming up for me is when listening to God, what is the role of community in that? Should there be a role of community? But then what you're saying there, I'm imagining these are Christian brothers and sisters that are not being helpful. So what are the challenges of community as well when listening to God?
Yeah. And that's again, another area or another point that we didn't get to unpack fully on Sunday, because I see the value of community in helping combat both of these lies. We need the community around us speaking the truth into us, speaking the truth that, you are not worthless. You are not, you are not nothing. And then we need, I maybe even more so, we need the community speaking the truth against our pride, and helping keep us in check. Because, one of the points I stated on Sunday was, I really think pride is maybe a more hidden, more subtle one of these sins and lies that we don't see.
Yeah.
It's oftentimes real. I can't think of a time in my life when I have known of someone who is incredibly prideful and they were aware of it. Maybe they were.
Yeah. Man, when you made that point at the end of the sermon of if you are prideful, you may not know it. It was like, yeah, that's again a hard challenge of okay, so there's some real work for me to do.
Yeah.
Some hard questions to ask.
And then, then so just the act of humility for someone living in pridefulness to go and, what I challenge people to do, go and ask people around you, am I a prideful person? Well, there's your first act of humility right there.
Yeah.
And so what I wonder is if I'm living at that level of pride, would I even be capable of doing that without God's help? See that is it's a first step toward humility, but it's also a first step towards submission to God and submission to his will. At that point, that's his spirit taking over, because I wouldn't naturally do that, but his spirit would lead me to do that.
Yeah.
And
I really do think Memorial is a very loving body. Like there are things that happen all the time that just say, man, we are really blessed to be here. But what if everybody assembled together, either on Sunday morning or when they are together, whenever the body is around other members of the body, what if they came together knowing, I really need to speak God's voice into those around me? Like, what if it was their goal to reinforce, hey, this is how I see Christ showing up in you? Wouldn't that be just an incredible thing to not just get together because it's what we do, but for each person to come with that sort of a mission when being together?
Yeah, we've talked before around the idea of testimonies, and I think the great value of those. I know the Collinsville Church several years ago, I think right after we transitioned away from there, they were doing these testimonial nights where they would get together and 3 or 4 of their members or people would come and just give testimonies about their life, their struggles. I know our daughter-in-law, at that time, she was just a teenager, like 16 or 17, and we weren't there for it, but I heard incredible response because she gave testimony about the struggles that she had been through when she was younger, like 13, 14, and how God had really just worked miraculously in her life. And I think would hearing those kinds of things on a more regular basis give us more empathy toward others, and maybe even help train us to learn how to help each other, and maybe how to be more in tune with what you're talking about, like when we get together, to be in tune with how can I speak life into my brothers and sisters. Because I think the more specifically we can speak life, the better it is. But how can I do that specifically if I don't know their story? And of course, so anyway.
We did this exercise with a few different groups, but we asked people, what is it that you wish somebody was saying to you? And then even what's advice that if you were sitting with God right now, God would give to you? Like you just know this is what he would tell you. Different questions like that, and then asking them, okay, so when you go out and you're with the body, why don't you give away what it is that you need to receive? And just start there. Just start with telling people, you know what, I see you doing really well. I really see this. If we would just start with what it is that we need, and give that to other people. Doesn't that just
Yeah.
seem like the way Jesus works?
Oh yeah. Or a question that I simultaneously would not want to be asked, but would want to be asked um, is what do you want everyone here to know about you right now?
Hmm.
And that would be one of those exposing, like, oh my goodness, no, I don't want
Yeah.
to. But yet, secretly, I'm like, oh, I wish everyone here knew that, so that they could
Hmm.
like really reach out to me in that way.
Yeah,
Um,
man, that's good. That's good. I I loved that you would circle back around to parents realize what these messages that you're giving to your kids, because you're right. Some of these messages are just things that we carry, and some
mhm.
are given to us by those around us. I've even seen people struggling with worth, um, and when they chase that rabbit trail and find out where is that coming from, uh, there were hovering or helicopter parents that did everything for them. They never
Yeah.
let them struggle. They never let them work on their own. And there was a message that they received from that that said, "You can't do it on your own. You have to have me here." And man, that if their parents knew, they would do anything they could to reinforce. No, we see the value in you, and we see your giftedness, but the child doesn't walk away with it. The child walks away with, yeah, I can't do this on my own. I'm not good enough.
Yeah, yeah. And some parents, I've even talked to some parents that say, but I just love doing that for my kids. And so, the challenge is they are blessed to do that for their kids, but sometimes we have to realize, okay, but is it the best thing for our kids?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
is it the
man.
best thing to, yeah.
Yeah, so I worked with AIM forever, and I would see, and when I worked with AIM, I was 19 to 26. Like there was a big span, but I was pretty young, and so I had a lot of judgments of parents that would rescue their kids and wouldn't let their kids experience their own um, consequences. But now I'm a parent of an aimer. And so Quincy is in Lubbock and he calls and says, I think I've got COVID. Um, I would have mocked any parent that would rush to Lubbock to take care of their baby that was sick. If Kim had said, I think I need to go to Lubbock and take care of him, bam. It's a different world when you want to love your kid and you want to take care of your kid and make sure they're safe.
Yeah.
Um, it is so hard to allow people to feel their own consequences, and not that that's the case here with COVID, but it's hard to let them live their consequences, and it's hard to let them live where they could be in danger.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It I that is one of the greatest struggles. It's one of the things I have to be most cautious about commenting on because I certainly, I have some strong feelings about those issues. But there's such a wide range of views on parenting and how to parent. Um, it's very very difficult because what one parent sees as beneficial, another may see as harmful, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah. But I think specifically the messages, I think maybe, whether to do your kids' laundry or not for them until they're 18, that's debatable. I think maybe it's not debatable in regard to the things we're saying to our children and the messages we give them. Um, and just, um, it's specifically with the negative, the harmful messages, um, and the comparisons that we may give. Those are we have to be really cautious about. And then the the I'm trying to think how to say it. Um, the overly positive, the affirmations of, you're the best, you'll always, I don't know. Those are hard because they can do as much harm as good if we're not careful.
Yeah, I remember seeing a research study where they took college kids, because most research studies are done on college kids, and they gave them a questionnaire to help gauge their level of confidence, and it had to do with a lot of how they were parented, how they were coached, and they correlated an unhealthy level of "I am always right" to the level of violence they would do to somebody in the same experiment. And it was, there's a lot, it seems like a really crazy thing to put out there, but it was a very specific study. And man, it was incredible to see people who had never experienced consequences, how willing they were to dish them out in violent ways. But it was, that was a long time ago, and that stays with you.
Yeah, for sure.
So we probably ought to wrap up, but is there anything else from Sunday that you wish you could have emphasized more?
There's a passage that I didn't get time to share in Romans chapter 4, where it's talking about grace, but it's talking about that the worker, when the worker does the work and gets his wages, it's just expected. It's not a gift. And then in that same verse, it says, "But to those who don't earn it and they still receive it, that is the gift." And I think that to me is the concept. That's the idea of grace that runs so throughout Scripture, and so combats the lie of pride. And I think the more we lean into grace, the less we buy into the lie of pride. The less we think that this is about me. This is because of me, and then it allows me whatever success. See, to me, the truth, God was just so infinitely wise in this, because his truth cuts it both ways, coming and going. His truth gets us at, okay, this is not your doing. This is because I have worked in you. It's because I have gifted you, because I've blessed you. And then when we have success, when we do anything great, then we don't have to take the credit for it. Then we're able to truly, humbly give credit where credit's due. And what I so love about God's wisdom in this is that it's just a full circle blessing in combating these lies, and the truth just so it is so perfectly well-rounded. I look at this, it's the gospel message, and I look at the gospel and the perfection of it, and the perfection of how it helps us in every way. So that was one thing I would have liked to have chased that a little bit more, and could probably be a whole other lesson, just the beauty and the perfection of the gospel.
Yeah. Man, I love that. I love that feeling of it is too big. Like there is just too much here to unpack, because that really is. When you say that right now, it's like, man, why didn't you talk the whole time about that? But everything you said was so needed and perfect for us, I think, even at this exact time and place. So, yeah. Well, thank you for taking time to be a part of this conversation.
Yeah, it was fun. I appreciate it. It was good. You and I actually haven't sat down and talked for quite some time. So
it's been a while. It's been a while. So, well, thank you for everything that you do. Honestly, I just constantly feel grateful that my kids get to be part of your ministry. The the patterns that you are creating in them, helping them just focus on listening to God and doing it in a community of believers. It's really just beautiful to watch. So thank you for that.
Well, thanks.
And thank you to Angela too, man. The presence that she brings to the youth group is just really a beautiful thing. Yeah, her spirit just, it's neat that she's the last one to call attention to herself, but you can feel her spirit in the group. I don't even know how she does that, but it's really a neat thing. So
Yeah, thanks for saying that. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I
Well,
appreciate it.
Yeah. So I'm going to stop the recording. Adios, Memorial and friends.
All right.